Hello, welcome to the Apart But Together Expanding Our Community Virtual Star Talk Conference hosted by the NFLC. My name is Rawson. I'm very excited to be with you today. My main job is at Concordia College, but through Star Talk, I'm with Fargo Public Schools with the Chinese program in the summer. And today I want to talk to you about adding to your teaching toolkit and how we might transition teaching language and culture online. And so we're going to add we've got our toolkit box down there and also the world so we can think about community and togetherness and bringing all voices to the table. So originally this session was for Central States and it was with some of my colleagues and we had face-to-face and online activities. So I've adapted what we were going to do at Central States a bit. There are activities here for all levels and good for all languages, and hopefully something new that you can learn and take home. I do have a Google Classroom, and the code there is at the bottom, WXP2EXD, and please join the classroom. All are welcome, and there are thousands of links to videos and documents, ways to get started teaching online, ways to do a better job teaching online, what teaching online means, and then tons and tons and tons of new technologies. So there's more on what I'm showing you here, but then there are many, many more things that we haven't even discussed here. There's so much out there, and I try to organize it and break it down for you a little bit in the Google Classroom. So please join us there. The outcomes today. So you, I hope, will be able to plan to implement new tools to support student processing and production of language. We want to help the students understand the language, process it, and produce it. And then there's an emphasis on community. So how can we create community in an online classroom? That is vital. And so Inside Higher Ed, for example, has a list of things we can do to create community in all classes, but they are especially adapted. Their article is about online, developing community online. And so we need to let students get to know us. In our classroom, we've been trained for that. We're naturals maybe, but here it's a new environment for us. And so video can be very powerful. I'm going to give you some examples for that in a moment. Having some real-time meetings, even in an asynchronous class, is considered a best practice, especially after what we know from COVID-19 and moving online. We've conducted research at my university, and the students overwhelmingly said, we need to meet with you. We want to meet with you. We want to meet with each other. They need that interaction. They don't always want it every day, all the time, and that's for you to decide, but at least having some touch points was something that the students at our campus said was extremely helpful to their success and that sense of community. And you can do this, and it's going to be incredible. So sometimes I tend to get too excited, and I can show you a lot of things. So I do that because I don't know where you're at and I don't know what you know. So please think about one tool that you can use to implement in your teaching right away this fall or this summer. And when you find that one tool, I hope that you go right after this presentation and you start exploring it. I will be at the Virtual Summit. I will be there, I believe, on a panel. I will be happy to answer questions, and I'd love to hear what tool you think you'd like to use. So I gave this presentation recently on my campus as well, or a modified version. We had a slightly different focus. And these were some of the things that my faculty told me in a cloud that they liked for engaging and motivating students. And you'll notice some of these are things that, we do automatically in our classrooms, right? I didn't ask about online, turning and talking to a partner, showing a picture and discussing it, different games. And I would like to say you can do all of these things online in some really creative ways. You'll notice KAHOOT rose to the top. We're going to talk about KAHOOT. Informal quizzing. I've got a whole bunch of things on that. And then I do have some information on Go, React, and Flipgrid. A new tool that is really popular right now that I'm just starting to play with, and this I'm not going to talk about a lot, but are these Bitmoji classrooms. If you'd like to know more, it's a way of setting up a completely virtual classroom, and you can put in all of the links and all of the different things that you might like. So this summer, this is kind of the trend that I'm seeing this summer. But let's get down to what we're going to actually do. And I want you to approach it with a spirit of play, right? We can get overwhelmed with the technology, so let's just play with it. Let's just think about having some fun, right? So let's get into it and let's talk about some of these different tools. So the first one, I think, is important for community to have that feedback. So doing some polling, right? Mentimeter, Slido, I'm not sure how you say it, Poll Everywhere are some of my favorites. You can import those into PowerPoints. They work really well for synchronous meetings. If you're not meeting synchronously meeting at the same time. If you're meeting asynchronously, where everyone's kind of doing work at different paces, then I use some of these other tools like Qualtrics, or Moodle is our course management system at Concordia. But even something like this thermometers picture, right? I got that off of Teachers Pay Teachers. It was free, so you can download it. The link's at the bottom there. The most important thing is, even if it's a little bit low tech, and you put a picture in and you tell your students to, hold up a finger in the chat room, what number are they at? Or send you a private chat, or send you an email, or whatever it might be. We need to find out how they're doing. Are they feeling great and ready to go? Or are they overwhelmed? And I've found with COVID-19 teaching online, a lot of times there are so many personal things going on that feeling of being overwhelmed happens faster. And it's not necessarily the material that is difficult, but it's life. And that was unusual for me. That was new. Typically, when I ask how they're doing, they're thinking about just French. French is my main discipline. But now a lot of other things get pulled in. So for me, it's important to sort all of this out and to give them lots of chances to give me feedback for how they're doing. So StarTalk has a ton of references on checking for, comprehension, and making sure your students are with you. And you can adapt most of those to online. And then here are some tech tools that could be fun to use too. So since most of those were synchronous, I'm not demoing them for you, but that cloud that I showed you at the beginning, we did through Slido. So now we know we're going to take the pulse of our classroom on a regular basis. We're going to get that feedback. We need those video introductions. So here are two. You're welcome to click on those links and see. You will need the biggest sort of trick to Flipgrid is you need like a Google email. You'll see it doesn't accept all email addresses. And so you can set it up for your class in different ways. This one was set up for my students. They all have an email like that. So these are ones that I actually used in the spring. So I left them. I didn't open it up more widely so you could actually see what it looks like with people and responses. But Flipgrid is very easy to use. You just click on that plus sign that you see in the corner there. You can do it on a phone. You can do it on any kind of platform. And students can add selfies and pictures, and they can blur out their face a little bit if they don't want to show their background or be on camera. They can add little emojis. They can comment on each other's video. It's very interactive, and it gets that aspect of video that we know from research learners absolutely need right now. And so here's a picture. This is Kira. She said I could share this with you. And I did a daily check-in on Flipgrid when we moved online this spring. Usually I just use it for some of our bigger things. In the past, that's how I had used it. But this spring, we moved to daily feedback. So on April 27th, I asked them, how are you feeling? What are you dreaming of doing this summer? Quick 1-minute video, 2-minute videos. And then as a class, I would sometimes make a mixed tape of all of their responses to share. Sometimes I kept them just for myself and responded to the students. But they were using French. They were seeing me. I answered the questions as well. They were seeing me. They were seeing each other. They were talking to each other, but just not at the same time. And it was really great for community. You can grade them and give them performance feedback, give them ideas on how they could do a better job with the content, and you can develop your own rubrics, as you can see there. I mostly use these to build community and to produce the target language, and help them process the target language, and it was very powerful. I've also used VoiceThread, and so these are some of the projects from students in our master's program, and VoiceThread is also a powerful tool when you have, for me, I use it when I have a presentation that's a little more serious, and so one person is the star, and then the other students, I think Rebecca was presenting on the German train system, and you can have everyone in the class come in and give comments, but it's all about Rebecca's, presentation. And you can't link them all together in community in the same way. So there's a link for Rebecca's. If I go back here, there's a link for Rebecca's. There's a link for Carolyn's. There's a link for, each person. Veronique's about La Cagolade. There's a link for each of the different people. They're together in mine because they were all my students, but, and you can link them in different ways, but it was more, this is Carolyn's time to shine. She's talking about Sevilla, and we all went in and made our comments to give Carolyn feedback, versus for Flipgrid, we all were in a community commenting on each other's. So there's different purposes, but they're all using video. They all have a sense of community. They all have interaction. So those are my favorite tools. Go React is a paid program that we have at Concordia, and that can be very powerful for student presentations, really great for giving feedback. I use that in my advanced classes, especially when I'm teaching interpretation, and we can see each other's. You can comment to the second on what they did, and the students can give feedback on each other. It's a very powerful tool. I also have students upload videos to YouTube or to our Google Classroom or to our course management system. Again, for us, that's Moodle. Sometimes we run out of space. So that's where YouTube and the Google Classroom can be really powerful. And this graphic here is just to remind you that, video really is powerful for helping our students remember. It is a great tool for producing language, for processing language, for creating community and getting a larger impact. Actually, my students enjoy putting their videos on YouTube and sharing them with their friends and family, with our partners abroad. So that has been a powerful experience for us. So now I want to move to quizzing tools, and we're moving fast, but you can always pause this video and you can come back and play anytime. What I did for all of these tools is I thought about the different StarTalk languages, and I asked myself what might be out there. So an important disclaimer is that I don't speak well any of the StarTalk languages, so please forgive any mistakes that you might see in those languages. My goal was just to show you that there might be something already created in your language, and you could always edit it and make it better. And you can always create your own, but I don't always have the time to make my own resources. So I do sometimes look to see what's out there, and then I fix any mistakes or any phrases that I don't think are quite right. Quizlet is very powerful, and it's flashcards essentially, but there are audio components, there are gaming components, there are testing components, and so there are tons of flashcard sets that people have already made on virtually every topic. I went with COVID-19 since it's on our minds a lot right now, and you can see you can integrate pictures if you have a paid version. On the free version, there's some limits, and so the Arabic version shows you sort of what a free version would look like. The bottom one, I suspect that Chinese teacher had a paid version, and they were able to do more with pictures. It's very powerful, and my favorite part about Quizlet, so this is great for producing the language, processing the language, learning the language. Students can make their own sets. Sometimes that's their homework for me, and I organize those all in a class in Quizlet, and so all of our sets are together, and I don't do the work. The students are creating the product, but I can still edit it. And then my favorite is playing Quizlet live. So this was my class. We did this online just this week. In fact, everybody was their own team. When you're in a face-to-face classroom, it's really powerful because they all can collaborate together, and you don't have all the answers on your phone. So Quizlet's being projected on the screen. I have my students do it on their phone or computer. But if they don't work together, they cannot solve it because they do not have all the answers. Their partner might have the answer. In this version that we did online, because I have students, some of whom are asynchronous, some of whom are synchronous, I did it where each person was their own team. So where it says kangaroos, that's one person, right? And so this is sort of a modification that Quizlet has done, and it still is powerful. And you can see here, the students that were in class at the same time are competing to see who can finish first. So I like the sense of competition. There's way you can turn off, this picture if you don't want them to see it. But for me, it's a little bit of fun motivation, and their names aren't on here. So it doesn't get too personal if you're at 0 and someone else is at 3 or 10. And it's a great fun way to review. At least that has been my experience. And the students really love when we are able to work in teams and they can share together and collaborate together and use that target language to communicate, because they have to discuss together what answer they think it would be. And in the classroom, I'm monitoring to make sure that their conversation stays in the target language. Kahoot is a very popular one. You may already know it. I only have the free version of these things. And if I have a paid version, I'll be sure to tell you. And so I couldn't keep the Kahoot game open long enough until the seminar. So the challenge might close before you see this video. I am not sure, but I can always reopen it. You can set another one yourself. But Kahoot is great for learning together or individually. So a challenge you do on your own time. You can do this anytime, and then I can see all the results of the class. I could bring that information back to the class, or it could just be an individual effort. So the top picture shows what it looks like on the screen. On the big computer is the question and the answers, and then the students can pick which one they think it is. You can randomize the order if you're worried about academic integrity. You can use nicknames if you don't want people to have to put their real name out there. And so sometimes, if you're worried a student who doesn't get it will be embarrassed, or the student that always dominates, likes to see their name up there with the nickname generator, they don't know who anyone is. And so that takes some of that negative side of the competition out of it if you wanted to use that. I often keep it off because it hasn't been an issue for me, but I recognize in some classes it is. And so in some classes I do turn that on. So here I found one on Korean food that looked pretty interesting to me, and I would love to know more. Some of my students are learning Korean and French right now, and they've been sharing with me a lot of their excitement for Korean culture. And so here was a built-in Kahoot ready to go. If you liked it, you can see this Kahoot has been played 1.4 thousand people 525 times, and 29 people really liked it. So that's a way, even though I don't speak Korean, that I'm hoping this was decent. And when it's your own language, of course, you're in a better position to judge that information and be the expert. So this is a fabulous and fun and quick polling, quizzing tool where and I have my students make all of these. So my students make the Kahoots. My students sometimes make the quizzes. Here's one I found in Urdu. In Quizzes is another quizzing platform, and all of these platforms have slightly different emphases. They do some of the same things. So these are flashcards that you can learn, and then when you're ready, you can take the quiz, if you will. And the quiz is very gamified. So here's what it looks like as the teacher. I can see the answers and I can see the choices. I can play it live with the students, or I can assign it as homework, or we can practice it together. Here I assigned it as homework, and here are some of the choices that you can see. How many times do they have to do it? Do you want to give them the answers, yes or no? I give them the answers, right? Do you want to show the leaderboard? You can turn that off. Do you want to turn the timer off? So thinking about different accommodations you might want to make, you can tailor this in many, many ways. My students love the memes. They love the redemption. And the memes are so silly sometimes, but they are funny and they really resonate with our students. And so that is one of their favorite things, is that they get these memes telling them if they did a good job or if they need to keep working. And it really is motivating for them. And then they can get bonus points and other fun activities if you turn the power-ups on, and it's all fun. There's nothing negative in any of these. And students, it's a fun way for them to learn. And it's a great way for them to produce the language. Quizalize, another quizzing one. This one you have to join, my classroom. So I've got a link to my classroom up there. Quizalize is very interesting because it is standards based. Like with all of these, there are free and paid versions. They're trying to add to their standards based group of offerings. So I asked them to add the ACTFL standards, the World Readiness Standards, and they did. So if your standard, they have TEKS, they have tons of things up there. If you don't see your state up there, they'll add them for you. They're great to work with. My favorite thing about Quizalize is the mastery mode. And so here was again a quiz that I found already made on a specific topic. I think we were doing Dari here. So I assigned this as homework, and the mastery mode means the students have to keep doing it until they get the questions right. All of these have great results that you can look at. I do really like Quizalize's differentiation. And so you can see the different options that you can pick here. And I pulled up some of the screenshots. So as you set up the quiz, you can say if you get less than 50%, it's going to have them do it until they get it right. But if you scored less than 50% the first time around, here's a resource to reinforcement of that concept. If you got 50 between 50 and 80, you're doing all right. Why don't you go do this? And then it'll say if you got over 80%, you're in the green. You could go watch this YouTube video, and so you have different activities that you could assign for them based on their score, based on their needs. And so you also have very powerful metrics that you can look at. So you can see, for example, here is one of my classes. I cut off their names, but here was an exercise we did. We were doing the subjunctive, it looks like, and you can see I can see exactly which student and which questions were tricky for them. And so as a teacher, I know exactly where I need to come back and focus on things. They all knew, the last 5. I don't need to bother going over those. They've got it. But I need to go back through, and you can see their answers. You can see what patterns there were. It's very powerful to look at the tools and how you be very effective with your usage of class time and targeted in how you help the different students and their needs. Gimkit, now this is one that I paid for, and I don't pay for a lot of things. The example I'm going to show you is in Swahili in Gimkit. You can make your own. You can take those Quizlet flashcards and you can import them into Gimkit. That's what I do most of the time. One of the fun things about Gimkit is that it was made by high schoolers for high schoolers. And so one of the things that they commented on is while you're waiting for everybody to get online, it takes forever. And so in Gimkit, you can draw on a whiteboard while you're waiting for people to get online. And so I always think if I had a character language, I would be having them draw characters while they were waiting. And so there are lots of ways that you could do this so that they're not just drawing, smiley faces, but you could be using that as time to be producing the language. So here is, the Swahili practice that I saw, and then the students can go in and they can play. Very important at the top here, you want to try to decide if it's a time, so if it's only going to be 7 minutes, or if it's a certain amount of money they have to get, or how you organize it. This game right now, I've set it up for 7 minutes. It will go for 7 minutes. It will repeat those answers for 7 minutes. If there are only 10 questions, it will repeat 10 questions for 7 minutes. The students can't get out until the 7 minutes are done, or they don't get their reward. It doesn't count for them. So you can decide if it's a race, if it's money, or if it's time, but that game goal is important to let your students know. And then in this game, you can, again, have the answers? Is there music, clapping, all of those things? This game has power-ups where they can freeze each other. So they can hurt other people's progress. There's a store where they can buy all kinds of cool things. If you don't like that they could hurt other players, not in a physical sense, of course, but, slow down the player's progress, you can make it so that they're only clean power-ups. I have to say my students really love icing people and freezing them so they can't answer for 10 seconds or something like that, or, different things. There's a Thanos version where if you collect all of the power stones, you can snap your fingers and eliminate half the class. They love those. They really find it motivating. They really love to learn this way. And the first time I did it as a class so they could see the store, they could learn how to use those power-ups together in the target language talking about it, and then they were off and running. I'm about out of time, but one way, of course, people think about building community are social media tools. I know of lots of projects people have used on Instagram and Facebook. Be careful to balance their private and personal worlds with their academic one would be my advice. I've used Twitter, I guess the most of those, because my students aren't on it as much, and also it kind of kept a line between our worlds that I thought was positive. And so it was a great way for us to build community in an asynchronous classroom where we were all working at different times, but we could come together over that. The French 360 was our Twitter hashtag. I only shared with you my posts. You can see I did not post very often. And the students didn't either, but it was an added tool. When they found something cool or using our texting languages, they could go in there and they could post things on Twitter, and it was just a way to keep the conversation going. So what should you use with all of this? There's a ton of ideas and research out there, lots of people's opinions. I've got resources in Google for how to use them and the pros and cons for each of them, but I think you find one that resonates with you and you own it and have fun with it. I use all of them, honestly. So just to avoid getting bored. Some people are worried about the students, getting confused by too many things, and I hear that. For me, I'm comfortable with these technologies. My students respond well to them and like them, and they know every day we're going to do a feedback, tool. Every day we're going to do a quizzing tool. They don't know which one, but they know they're going to have a chance to give me their feedback and to play with the language and to produce the language and to do videos with the language. And so that's kind of the consistent theme in my classes, and that's what works for me. I really am a believer in gamification in the educational sense. There's some articles there about gamification, and so lots of different things you could do here. I'm not going to talk about it today, but it's the idea that we have a goal and we're making the learning challenging. Where, my children are addicted to video games. They spend all their time on it. How can I take that energy and that desire and curiosity and outside the classroom engagement and create that around my class? And gamification helps me do that. And so a lot of these tools today, I think, have some of that spirit in them at a different level. And so this is the advanced level. If you knew everything I showed you, start checking out some of these things here. And here are, I know the links won't work in the video, but you can write them down. They're all in the Google Classroom as well. And so start playing and start exploring. I hope you can see how we met our learning outcomes, that you have a new tool that you could plan to support, that you can plan to use, that supports student processing and production of language, and that will help create community in an online classroom. So my question to you is, which one are you going to implement this fall? So I look forward to answering your questions at the Star Talk conference, and keep playing. Go on to our Google Classroom and share your favorite tool, or feel free to contact me over email. Merci bien et bonne continuation. Thank you, Star Talk. It was a pleasure being part of this virtual summit, and thank you for watching this video today.